I think the most destructive belief is the belief that there's something wrong with you or with yourself, because then if you truly believe that, you see it in your reality, it becomes your reality, because you see all the things that other people are doing differently than you that you can't do.
Sounds good. So, like I told your brother, the podcast is called The Big Questions, and the first
Okay.
question I like to ask my guests is, in my opinion, the biggest question of them all: who are you?
Okay. A loaded question, but I like it. um, so I'm a white middle class kid from Vermont who grew up, and the older I got, the more disconnected and depressed I got. And um, for the longest time, I just believed it was something that was wrong with me, and I would live with it for the rest of my life. And that's how I went through the first 23 years of my life. And then when I was depressed and looking for something external that could fix me, I decided to go to a neurologist and try and see if there was like something wrong with my brain, because deep down I wanted to find something wrong with myself, because then it would justify where I was at in life, and it would justify my mediocre existence. I mean, I lived from the time I was 18 to 23, even a little before that, I lived to disconnect from life. I lived to play video games and to party, and that was it, because I don't know, it was just my only way to cope. The only way I knew how to deal with things was to try and escape them. And then after I got out of the neurologist, she said, I took a bunch of tests. She said my brain was fine. That was like really tough, because I felt more hopeless than ever, because the medical industry is really the only path that I knew of to treat mental illness or any illness, really. So when I left there, I felt, okay, I'm completely alone and I don't know what to do. But that's when I started doing some research on my own about alternative medicine. And I found about some plants. Eventually, I found a TED talk by Robin Carhart Harris about psilocybin and depression. And I said, all right, I'm desperate. I'm going to try psilocybin, because at that point I was 23, never had taken a psychedelic. I'd taken plenty of other drugs, but psychedelics always scared me. I mean, the propaganda on it was you're going to lose your mind. And that's like one of my biggest fears. So I just stayed away from it. I knew they were powerful, and I knew they weren't as consistent as things like alcohol, cocaine, tobacco, like those things. I knew what I was going to get, and I was okay with it.
Mhm.
And so I grew my own psilocybin. I got just enough for one experience. Like they all aborted because I didn't know what I was doing,
Mm.
but I got enough for one experience, and it was about 1 gram of aborts. And I had this experience, and nothing much was happening. It was just a pleasant time. And I went down to lay in my bed, and when I was laying there, I started thinking, repeating thoughts over and over again. And I thought like what I was thinking was so profound that I had to hold on to it. I couldn't let go of it. And so after repeating the same thought in my head over and over and over, I just lost consciousness. And what I came out of it, which felt like 5 minutes later, and I looked at my clock, and it was about an hour and a half had went by. And I was scared because I didn't know what had happened. And I didn't know what had happened for the longest time. I think now, finally looking back, I think I was just in a state of like catatonia, just drooling, looking at the wall. Nothing was going, like I wasn't home, if you know what I mean. Like my consciousness wasn't there, because I came out of that experience and I only really remembered one thing. And it wasn't even that I remembered it. It was just this feeling and this image, like this symbol, that which terrified the hell out of me. It was this image of this kind of just like swirling ball of colors. And after I woke out of that, I got up and that image came to my mind and it sent jolts of fear through my body, and it sent me into like a fight or flight mode. And I just like didn't know what to do. I ran to the bathroom, started thinking like, should I call the ambulance? Should I call my mom? What should I do? And it was the most existential anxiety I've ever felt. I never knew anything like that really.
So
Ultimately,
in all your years of depression, you never encountered anything like that.
no. Like in my years of depression, it was always this like dullness on life. Like I didn't feel as much. I didn't feel pleasure. I don't think I felt pain as much either. I don't think I was feeling it as much as anything. And that wears a person down over time, where it makes you just not want to do anything because there's no reward in doing anything. But this was completely different. This was a feeling like I'm gonna die,
Hmm.
like kind of like the first time I like actually not realized I was gonna die. Obviously, I always realized it, but the first time I felt it and like let myself feel it. And I wouldn't have been able to get there if it wasn't for the psilocybin breaking down my barriers. Because I think in a way, what I was doing for the past, 5-10 years with the distraction, with the video games and the partying, was escaping all my fears.
Hmm.
And the biggest fear for me is death. And I think when the psilocybin dropped those barriers, I was flooded and overwhelmed with all my fears and anxieties that I'd been repressing. And so for 5 days after that, I had that continuous existential anxiety. And I kept thinking over and over in my head, I fucked up. I'm going to have this anxiety for the rest of my life. And it terrified me. But there was one hopeful thing inside me that said, just get through this. You'll be okay.
Hmm.
And I think that's something um, that I've always kind of gotten with the psychedelics. There's this nurturing quality that says like, you're okay. You can do this. And after that 5th day, I pretty much laid in bed for 5 days, didn't do anything. I was like paralyzed by fear and anxiety. And after that 5th day, things started to get better. And I started to feel more gratitude and kind of like I've been given a new shot at life. And I kind of realized that in feeling all that fear and anxiety, I allowed myself to access the gratitude and love that I had also been repressing
Hmm. Because they're two
for
sides of the same coin, right? If you repress one, you're going to repress the other.
exactly. And I didn't even realize how much I had been repressing of like feelings. Cause I mean, on that 5th day, I started to feel better. I went and talked to my parents and I told them everything. And at that point, I even told them that I drank alcohol when I was 23. I didn't tell my parents anything. But another like thing that I got from the psilocybin was like, be open, be vulnerable, and trust people around you. And so I told them, and they're like, uh, well, it's great that it helps you. Now stop, don't go any further. And, but I mean, one of the greatest things that I had was a support system. I had my mom and my dad, I had my brother, and a couple other people that I could talk to and tell these experiences to. And they didn't look at me like I was crazy. They just looked at me and were happy that I was feeling more. And that was crucial because I think in a different setting, like if I was alone and I didn't have anyone to talk to, that experience could have very well become traumatic and I would have wanted to repress it. Because in those 5 days, all I wanted to do was repress it. I wanted to play video games. I wanted to drink. I was taking this other substance called kratom before.
Mm-hmm.
That is an opiate, and I was using that pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped all that right after, and I was like, I can't keep escaping this feeling. I can't keep trying to run from it. And so, I mean, compounding the existential anxiety was also the withdrawals from nicotine, kratom. Uh, my other big vice, the one of the hardest things, substances, most destructive relationships I had was with Adderall,
Mm-hmm.
which I was prescribed at 16. And I was prescribed it because I wasn't doing my schoolwork and I just couldn't find the motivation to do schoolwork. And it helped tremendously for that. I got all my work done, but then it also entrenched this belief more that there's something wrong with me.
Because
Because
you needed it, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
all these other kids are doing their work fine, but I can't do it without this substance.
Right.
And I mean, I I think the most destructive belief is the belief that there's something wrong with you or with yourself, because then if you truly believe that, you see it in your reality. It becomes your reality because you see all the things that other people are doing differently than you that you can't do. I guess after that experience, I felt a lot better and I started changing a lot of things about my life. I literally like started waking up at 6 a.m. I hated waking up early. Started meditating, doing yoga, making art. I started trying to learn the piano. I stopped drinking. I remember like on the third day or like after that, I told my brother and dad that I'm never drinking alcohol again. And they kind of like were like, yeah, okay. Didn't really believe me,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't think I was being as honest with myself as I could have been. I mean, I felt like I had this experience and like, oh, now everything's better. Like it's all gonna be sunshine. You know, it's everything's fixed. But that was wishful thinking. And I mean, 3 months after that, all my patterns that I'd been creating relapsed. It started
Hmm.
with like not waking up early again. I started waking up late. Then I was like, stopped doing yoga, stopped meditating, all this. And then at one point I was like, um, it's not a big deal. I'll just go out and drink. And I was like, okay. And then pretty much I was right back to where I was before, except even more depressed because I felt like I had squandered this opportunity, this new opportunity. And I was depressed for a while, but the big lesson in that was I I can't do this all alone. I thought I could just change all my patterns and my habits, and all of a sudden I'd be better off. Everything would be good. But the more I changed about, my patterns, my outside world wasn't changing. I was still like 23, no job. Um, I mean, one thing that did stick was um, after the psilocybin on that fifth day, I had a dream. The only time a dream has ever had, I think, like a tangible effect in my life. I had a dream of being a psychologist, and I woke up the next morning and I re-enrolled in college, which I dropped out. I would never didn't have any plans to go back. I thought college was just kind of trying to take advantage of me, and it was just more of a commercial business than anything. But I figured my biggest problem in life, or one of them, is my inability to complete what I started.
Huh.
I
Join the
put in,
club.
yeah. I mean, I put in 2 years of college and I was lucky enough to have my parents pay for that. And I just gave up on it. So I was like, okay, 2 more years right now. And this will really test myself and see if I'm committed to changing. And I did finish college. And I mean, ultimately, like what I learned from college and the degree, they're not that important to me. But the fact that I finished it after having that psilocybin experience, it'll always make it'll always just be evidence to the fact that that was meaningful and it was transformative. And I think that's a big lesson I've learned with psychedelics, is that in a way where I'm kind of given an opportunity of whether I want to make this thing transformative in my life.
Hmm.
Like it could just be a powerful experience, and that could be all it is, or it could be an experience that I don't ever want to revisit and I repress. And I mean, that has its effects too. If you repress it, it's still working under the surface. But yeah, I mean, I was still struggling for a couple years, or a year and a half, with depression and finishing school. And I almost dropped out of college again, but I stuck it out. And it wasn't really till I reconnected with Rory, my brother, um, and I showed him, maybe these psychedelics could help you with your addiction. And that's when it really started to change for both of us, because it wasn't just me in it trying to change my life. It was us working together to just better ourselves and the people around us. And I know you talked to Rory a little while ago and he shared his story, but um, when we decided to kind of create our ritual, going out in the woods and sitting together and connecting, that's when these habits that I've been trying to integrate for the past, honestly, like 5 years of my life, there's all these things. Oh, I want to wake up early. I want to do cold showers. I want to do these things. It wasn't until that we started doing that ritual that things like that started to stick.
Mhm.
And it was kind of in an opposite way that I normally go about these things. Usually I say, I want to stop playing video games so much, so I limit my time of video games,
Mhm.
and I'll be good for like a week, and then I'll be like, I don't know, I'll relapse into patterns and play a bunch. But with the ritual that we're doing, it's not so much what do you not want to do, it's more what do you want to create. And what we want to create is deeper connection. And one thing about the fourth week into our ritual, one thing I noticed is I want this deeper connection with my wife and my daughter. And my daughter at that time was probably like 6 months old, or maybe a little younger. And they're on my bed, playing, and I go to play video games, and I'm like, this is so counterintuitive. I want deeper connection with my family, and yet there's an opportunity here, and I'm disconnecting. And it's for me, it was because the anxiety that those experiences brought up, the anxiety of, oh, what if I fail? What if I can't connect deeply? What if I'm a bad father? What if I'm a bad wife or a bad husband?
Yeah.
and and those are a lot of fears that I wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge as much earlier on in my life. And I think the ritual really encourages me to feel these fears, allow them in, and just accept them. And then once you accept them, you can make the best choice. But like when I repress them and I don't make them conscious, then they have an effect on me that I can't even adjust to.
You might not even be aware of it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So mind if I ask where you picked all this stuff up? Is this just all intuitive? Because I mean, you're basically quoting, Rumi and Carl Jung and stuff like that. Like, are you reading up on this stuff, or are you just arriving at these conclusions intuitively?
Um, well, Carl Jung was huge, probably the biggest influence in my life at the time
Nice.
um, when I was researching psychedelics and I was in school. I mean, in psychology classes, they teach you about Freud. They don't even mention Carl Jung, but outside of class, all I was reading was Carl Jung. And
Nice.
yeah, I mean, his ideas about the shadow are very much aligned with what I just told you about letting these fears in, and
Absolutely.
that's what we try to encourage in the ritual. And I mean, when it comes to other things like the ritual, honestly, that was kind of a shot in the dark. But I've taken archaeology classes before, and there was this one. There's actually this one book I read that these Americans were studying this African tribe that chewed on this plant called kanna, and they described it as a euphoriant, like these African tribes people would eat it and start dancing and doing all this ecstatic stuff. But when Americans tried to take it, there was no effect. And I mean, I even bought some and tried it, and there was very little effect. I mean, over time, it actually is a pretty good antidepressant, but it's not a euphoriant.
Mhm.
So I started thinking, like, why do these people have this effect? And the big thing comes down to the context, the ritualized aspect. It comes down to the holistic approach to it. It's not just about a plant or the pharmacology of what it does in the brain. It's
Right.
about being there with your tribe, doing this together,
Dancing
and
in unison. Ooh.
dancing. Yeah,
Getting into
exactly.
the
Like,
rhythm, into the flow, and then things start to happen for sure.
absolutely. And I also studied a little, my minor was anthropology.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of that. It's a lot of outside people like Americans, Westerners, looking at ancient tribes and trying to understand how a ritual works. But there's no concept of it. They can't understand it. And to me, it showed the power of like intentionality in what you're doing and why you're doing it. And these things often go back generations, generations, and generations. But it's all meaningful. It's things that seem so simple, like the way you pass a cup, or like these tiny things have significance. Even if you don't always understand it, there is some intentionality behind it.
Mhm. Well, there's
And
always intentionality behind it. Absolutely. Right. I mean, like, I think of a Japanese like tea ceremony,
uh-huh.
so elaborate, right? It forces you to be present because you can't be thinking about the game or if you're going to get paid next week, or you have to be so focused on what you're doing that it drags you into the present moment in a one pointed manner. And that's what we need, man, is presence. We're always time traveling past and future. So rituals
Absolutely.
help us ground us in the present moment. I imagine that's part of what you guys are doing out there on Sundays, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like that, like getting present is the goal. And in this ritual setting, I can get more present than I can in normal life, but that trickles down in my normal life, my regular day too. Like I feel more present now in my everyday life, although it's a lot harder because you have, the stressors of everyday life, the anxieties and worries that you got to deal with. But the more I can focus on getting present in that ritual setting, the more I can trust it. And it's really this faith, because like you have to have faith in the present moment, because I want to naturally worry about what's coming next. I want to think about, oh, maybe I'll have to do this in the future. I should prepare for it now.
Hmm.
But to have faith in the present means I don't have to worry about the future. The universe will take care of that. I just got to be as present as I can right now and just focus on this moment. And the more I can cultivate that trust in the present moment, the better. And I think, like you're saying, like those rituals, they're they haven't been lost in our society. They've just been kind of bastardized. Like
Hmm.
you can think about like football Sunday. That's kind of a ritual,
It
But
absolutely is.
yeah. So, but what's the goal there? Is it to connect? I think initially that is the goal. You want to connect with your friends, but in reality, going to watch a game where everyone's looking at the TV, everyone's drinking, eating a bunch of food, it's not really connecting to each other. It's kind of disconnecting from life, disconnecting from, work, family, all these other things. On Sunday, I get to get away from all that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not really like, how do we bring back rituals? It's how do we make rituals that are conducive to growth?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, you're right. And it's, I guess the idea is that a ritual is just something that you do in a recurring way that is, there's a certain set pattern. I think of people, Catholics who go to mass, they don't really understand what the ritual is about, probably doesn't have much resonance with them because they don't have a connection to the ritual, but they still perform the ritual. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like football Sundays is kind of like that. It's a ritual, but it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't lead to growth, doesn't expand your consciousness, it doesn't help you bring the present moment to the forefront in regular day life, right?
Yeah, I think uh, that you're spot on. A ritual is just like, very simply, it's something you do recurring, it's structured, and I think there's the value in that is I don't go into this thinking like, oh, maybe I should do this today or maybe I shouldn't, or maybe it's this is what I'm doing no matter what. I'm going to be here and I'm going to be doing this. And another part of that is the more you do it, the more the intention gets ingrained into the action. So it's
Mm.
not really me thinking, oh, I'm going to go deep into my fears today or I'm going to do it with this. It's I'm going up there and I know what I'm going to get because I've been cultivating that intention every week. And I mean, the thing about rituals is the more you do them, the more they grow and the more value they have. Like if me and my brother were to do the first 3 weeks and then we just quit, those memories that we had would be valuable. But because we're still going now, I don't know, 40 weeks later or more, the rituals back then have even more power because everything led us to where we are now. And it's obviously that's true with anything, but it's easier to see in that setting, looking back and thinking about, oh, remember week 6 when this happened, how does that affect us now? And
Do you guys keep track of, you guys like a journal or anything like that, or keep track of some of the stuff that happens week to week?
um, yeah, not consistently, not very good, but I write a lot and I journal. And after, um, most times after a ritual, I will the next day or that night, I'll just write a few things about what happened. And I think it's really good. I've been revisiting the stuff I've been writing, and it really just helps me see what has changed. Because when I'm in my daily life, working my same job, sometimes it's just lost. Like, but to look back a year ago, a year and a half ago, my family was on the verge of splitting. Rory was deep into addiction. My daughter was actually that was when my wife was still pregnant. We were living in the same house. Um, they were fighting, everyone was fighting, and we were thinking, my wife and I were thinking, for the baby, the best thing is probably to get away from this, to
Hmm.
just go find a different place, and that was almost the reality. It was very close to that happening, but that was actually like right when we started doing the ritual, um and after that second week when Rory overdosed, he went to rehab and came back, and then he didn't go back to using. And that was when we knew, okay, we can stay together, we can stay connected, we can. And it sounds bad to say, like, I would leave my brother, but when someone is having such a powerful effect on your family, especially in a very aggressive, um like I love my brother, but the stuff he was saying in those moments was some of the most hateful and terrible things I could ever imagine. And if he wasn't my brother, I probably would have never talked to him. But I knew him. I grew up with him, and I knew that wasn't him. I knew that was a projection of anger and fear and all these things that he'd been pushing away his whole life. And I knew that if he just got through that, I would get my brother back, and he did.
Yeah.
And
I got a
yeah,
hypothetical for you, a hypothetical
yeah,
question. I have a similar situation in my life, but it's not addiction, but it's a different issue. But let's just say that your brother had not cleaned up. Let's just say he had kept using. Do you think then it would be justified for you to create space, not abandon your brother, but to remove yourself from a situation that is hostile and toxic and negative for you, your wife, and your baby? Do you think at that point it would have been like, okay, well, again, not saying you would be abandoning him, but knowing that he's still in that space, would that have made things different for you?
yeah, absolutely. I think in that situation we would have. And like you said, like, it's not abandon him. I'd probably still see him, but I probably wouldn't let him see my wife and daughter much, if at all. Maybe once in a while. But now, like, my daughter Evie is 14 months, and Rory is the closest, um, really, relative that she has besides my mom and dad, which is just so great to see because I mean they love each other, and um, yeah, it's just
Beautiful,
nice.
man. I mean, I'm so happy that it turned out uh, positively for you guys. I mean, it's amazing, and I can't help but think that, you played a big part in that for your brother. Obviously, talking to him, it seems like he feels the same way, and it's crazy to me that introducing him to ayahuasca was the catalyst, and according to him, the first time that he felt like he was okay, right? Um, what do you think it is about psychedelics that makes them so demonized by the authorities or by the establishment, in your opinion, having experienced the positive effects yourself?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, to oversimplify it, I would say fear. I would say that these substances are more disruptive, and they're honestly more powerful. And that's not to say they're powerful only for good. They can be powerful in negative ways too. And that's why the set and setting and the whole holistic aspect of what it is you're doing is so important. But I think that in the 1960s, the government saw that these things were dangerous, or not dangerous, but disruptive, and it scared them. And I think another thing that the fear that comes back to the fear is, I believe that psychedelics in the past, or at least in some aspects, were used to confront humans' fear of death. And I mean, I'm reading this one book, The Immortality Key,
Hmm.
and he talks about the Eleusinian mysteries and how they would take certain substances to try and confront death, and then they would kind of be reborn and would be able to live life more fully, knowing that it, just knowing that, I don't know, that they're okay, that death is a necessary thing, and it's not worth trying to repress or escape. And in our society, that is the way we deal with it. We
Hmm.
repress it. We don't talk about it. I didn't, like, you just understand that what death is, but you never sit down and talk about it. Like in ancient cultures, there was death rituals, there was like certain teachings on things like that. But
Yep.
the way Western society does is just ignore it. You're not going to die right now. Don't worry about it. You'll deal with that in 80 years.
Oh,
And
yeah, if you're lucky, right?
yeah, and I think that does a huge disservice because I think for me at least the first 23 years of my life, I was going through life with that fear repressed, and it was having an effect on me in a negative way, in a way that it was keeping me stuck in where I was because I could never transcend the fear. But and that's not to say I don't fear death anymore. I think fear is actually quite valuable, and I do fear death. I don't want to die now, but I don't honestly. I believe when eventually death comes, it'll be okay. I won't need, you know, to
Yeah.
do anything else.
Well, something that you said in your earlier explanation about your psilocybin trip kind of spoke to me, and I've had a similar experience before where, you said like, "Oh, I always knew I was going to die," but something was different there, right? And it's almost like knowing that you're going to die is one thing, but then experiencing the truth of that, like not just thinking it, but actually feeling it in your bones, that wakes you up. And it sounds like that's kind of what happened to you. It was like the embodied realization that, oh shit, I will die one day. And that's for a lot of people, as you say, we don't confront that at all in our society. So for a lot of people, that is a jarring experience.
Absolutely. And that brings up a good distinction of like feeling versus like knowing. There's like the logical brain. And what we do as humans is we rationalize things with logic to escape them or to cope with them in a way. And I think there is something, so lost when we don't get to feel these things. Like I never thought feeling fear was valuable. I always repressed it because why would I want to feel fear? It
Hmm.
wasn't until I had that experience that I realized, oh, there is value in fear. There is value in allowing myself to feel these things. It can actually be a powerful motivator and empowering. I mean, and that was completely like I never even thought about that before. I never like what if growing up or in schools they taught you that feeling these things can be really valuable. Maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. Maybe things have been different, but absolutely, there's a huge difference between knowing and feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it goes deeper than that in some ways, doesn't it? Like we tend to get focused on like symbols and concepts and at the expense of like the actual reality to which they point, right? And so we get like focused on things like money and the economic system as if it's something independent and real, like has an objective reality, when in truth it's really just a bunch of humans got together and came up with some systems to make things convenient. But now we're like lost in the system that we created, and we think that it's real and that it holds all of us hostage. And so like I feel like in life there's a lot of these situations where we get kind of like bamboozled by our own thoughts and our own ideas about things instead of actually experiencing things directly and then gaining real insight into what they are.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that you say like focusing too much on a symbol and not at what it points at. Because the more you try, or for me, the more I try and interpret these things, the more they're changed in a way. Like an experience in itself that is like very I don't know, deep, I guess, is ineffable. The words can't really describe it. And words are a part of that logical, rational mind that is trying to decipher the external reality that we see and make it, digestible for us. And obviously, language is very important and it helps us connect with each other. But I think there's definitely something for just having an experience and not needing um, to define it or to
Mhm.
label it.
Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think psychedelics and profound mystical experiences, whether they're induced by substances or not, they kind of reveal that to people. And certainly that's when I started thinking about this kind of stuff. I had a really profound experience, and it was staggering in its clarity and simplicity. Like it brought tears to my eyes. I thought like I fucking figured it out. I wanted to stand up in my office and tell everybody. And then when I tried to explain it to my wife later that day, I was like, fuck. I have no
Yeah.
idea how to say it. I don't know what to say. I couldn't explain it or put it into words. And so Much like yourself, I thought maybe I was going a little crazy, but now I
Yeah.
realize that all language is an attempt to translate transcendence. Like you can't fully capture an experience in words. You can kind of approximate, but you can't. It's like trying to describe the color red, you know?
Yeah. And
Well,
that's such a frustrating thing. You know what I mean? Because like you have this powerful experience and you want so badly for the people you love to have that too, because you know how powerful it is to you. And no matter what you do, you can't give them that, you know? That's something they have to
100%
find on
true.
their own.
100% true. And I mean, certainly you can be a helpful guide as clearly
Yeah.
you have been for your brother. And I've served that capacity for a few people as well. But I agree with you. It's when it's so obvious and so like real to you and you can't just get it across to someone else, it's like, oh man.
And it can be kind of demoralizing too, because the more you try and explain it, the more, like you said, the more you think, oh, you start doubting yourself. Maybe
Hmm.
this wasn't as powerful as I thought it was. And um, I mean, something that I'm really trying to work on now is just like to accept people's feelings, beliefs towards me, no matter what, even if it's not what I want. Like, I don't know, I've had other people in my life that have had psychedelic experiences, and like I could point at them and be like, it doesn't seem like you really want a transformative experience. It seems like you're doing this because it's kind of like this is what they said would help, and but you're not giving it your all. And I'm not gonna say that. I'm just gonna be like, okay, you tried, you know, you're trying, and just be okay with that. In the past, I would be like, you're not fucking doing it right. You know, this is what you gotta do. But I learned that that never helps.
No, and I think, and maybe you're coming to this as well, but yeah, I'm big on that too, and I have to remind myself that I don't fucking know
Yeah,
what's right. I don't know, and what's right
yeah,
for me is not what's right for another person. So it's like, well, ayahuasca or whatever it is, psychedelics isn't for that person, isn't or maybe they're not ready for it. Whatever. Again, it is what it is. But yeah, yeah, I've noticed that as well. I mean, I've met people who have done a lot of psychedelics, and it's like, you didn't pick up anything from that, did you?
yeah,
Again, my opinion, but it just doesn't strike me as like something, nothing's changed. So yeah, it really, and I don't know if I was talking to your brother about this, but psychedelics in and of themselves are not, they're just a tool. And if
yeah,
you don't use it properly, then it's not going to have the desired effect. It's that simple.
yeah. Exactly. I think about it like, imagine if we didn't have any mind altering drugs, and then humans just came across one substance that changed, that altered their perspective. That would be the holy grail. That would be the most powerful tool in the world, really, because even if for a moment this human got a glimpse of reality, themselves, their tribe from a different perspective that no one else had known, that's so powerful.
Mm,
And the fact that we have drugs and we've demonized them, like these tools we said are just bad, just outright bad. Well, at the same time, our government has promoted, you know, pharmaceuticals on a mass scale, whereas I think 75% of all Americans are taking pharmaceuticals.
wow.
At the same time, saying drugs are bad, it's like this complete hypocrisy, and kids realize this, and that's why they start going, maybe this is all bullshit. I got to test for myself. I'm gonna smoke weed. I'm gonna try cocaine. I'm gonna drink alcohol. I'm gonna try these things because I can't rely on any of the information that I'm getting from outside. I have to find this out for myself.
Yep.
And that's why I think like our current drug education system is having the opposite effect that we are intending of it. And it's leading to more reckless drug behaviors. And if we really want to help kids, we have to tell them, listen, drugs are tools. They are powerful. They can have transformative effects. They can be destructive or constructive. It depends on how you use them. So be very careful with them because they're gonna have an effect.
Yeah. Transparency. Tell them the truth as far
Exactly.
as we know it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, abstinence only, prohibition. These are some of the stupidest ideas humans have ever come up with in terms of social policy and law. I mean, prohibition never works. You're just pushing it to the black market. It's like,
Yeah.
vote for me. I'll legalize prostitution. I'll decriminalize all drugs. We're going to have a better world. But yeah, it doesn't make sense to take that approach, especially with kids, as you say, because kids are already naturally rebellious. I don't know if you've seen this with your young daughter yet, but I've got
Yeah.
3 kids. And let me tell you, the best way to get them to do something is to tell them not to fucking do it. And they
Yeah.
will be in there like a dirty shirt. So telling them don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't have sex, don't have sex. It's like, do drugs, have sex? Okay, I got you. Right? Good luck.
Yeah. It's for me in my life, like, um, I always was curious about drugs ever since like first learned about them. But I had this belief that drugs are bad and people that use drugs are bad. So when I first tried like cannabis and I had an experience, I was like, wow, that was powerful and potentially valuable. I immediately was hit with the shame and guilt of I'm a bad person because these are bad things.
Right.
And I didn't really allow myself until I was about 23 to really believe that substances could be used in constructive ways.
Hmm.
Before then, it was always destructive and I knew it and I just couldn't stop. I mean, I
Right.
drank alcohol pretty much every weekend and I took Adderall all the time. And the more I did that, the more I hated myself.
Hmm.
But these were the sanctioned drugs. You know, I was prescribed Adderall. Alcohol is perfectly legal.
Yeah.
These were things that I don't know. And so the more I did that, the more deeper I went into depression and social anxiety, started isolating myself like from everyone because I was just terrified of being rejected for who I was. And the more I drank alcohol and partied, the more I entrenched this belief that there's something wrong with me and that I'm not funny. It's only the alcohol. The only reason
Hmm.
people want to talk to me is because of the alcohol, to a point where I didn't have any confidence going out in public at all. So it was either like quit alcohol and become a hermit
Hmm.
or continue to drink dangerously and go out and have friends. That was like what I was hit with at like 21. And that's why I originally dropped out of college. Well, that and other things, but I just had no friends and I was just hated who I was. And yeah, I mean, at 23, when I saw that study by Robin Carter Harris and John and some out of Johns Hopkins, where they were showing the effects of psilocybin in um, in scientific studies, you know, irrefutable, like the science was there. It was like,
Hmm.
okay, that's proof substances can, at least I'm not saying they will, but they can potentially have a positive effect. And that's what really like kicked me off to like, okay, I want to find how to use these substances in my life in the most constructive way possible.
Right. And so now that you've had a psilocybin experience, obviously, maybe a little bit of cannabis there. Is there anything else that you have experimented with that has had positive impacts on you or things that you're doing on an ongoing basis? Like I know people microdose psilocybin, for example, and apparently that's got a lot of benefits. Are you dabbling with anything else?
Um, well, we smoke cannabis at the ritual once a week,
Yeah.
and that is incredibly effective, which is interesting because I had always used cannabis in destructive ways in the past. I thought at 23, when I was finding the psilocybin, I thought one of the reasons I want to do it is like I got to kick this cannabis habit. It's just destructive, and I mean it just goes to show like the structure and intention and everything of why you're doing it is more important because now cannabis is incredibly beneficial relationship that I have within my life, and it helps me a lot. And then, as to your other question, I don't microdose. I've tried it, but wasn't really for me. And but there is some this other substance. It's called mugwort. It's just a plant,
Hmm.
and in and of itself doesn't really have much effects. But I I was talking to my wife about like creating a ritual in our life to help us connect more because she's not in the group ritual that I do on Sundays. So we started doing this thing every night where we light some mugwort and then we try and synchronize our breathing for like 10 or 20 deep breaths and eye gaze.
Hmm.
And just for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then we talk about it. And that has been super powerful as well. And it helps us feel more connected. It helps her understand what I mean by ritual and what we're doing on Sundays. She feels more connected in that way. And it's been really powerful. And that kind of goes back to like the thing I was talking about with the South African or the African tribe using kana. Like
Hmm.
mugwort of itself, you probably won't feel anything. But in that state with eye gazing and the breathing,
Yeah.
you definitely feel an altered state. You feel calmer, you feel more connected. And then besides that, I have had a um, relationship with caffeine that is kind of, I want it to be healthy, and I think it is in some aspects, but also it's not in other aspects. So I don't know how to make that one work yet, but I'm
Oh,
still
let's
working on
talk,
that.
man, because I got a caffeine addiction. Tell me about yours.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about mine. I'm down to like 2 cups a day, so I feel like that's not bad.
Ah, that's
What's
not
your
bad.
deal?
Dude, like I can go like a week without drinking caffeine, but then I'll be like, I want caffeine, and I'll drink it, and like I drank like a monster today, and I felt great. Whole day was good, and I see like, why can't I do this every day? But I can't, because like it's not like that one time. That's like the peak, you know. That's like the best case scenario. After that, if I continue to do it, it has kind of less and less effects,
Yeah,
and I think it comes down to, for me, like why I do it, why I want to drink caffeine, and when I do it. Like the why is really important. Like if
yeah,
I'm trying to disconnect from life, if I'm feeling anxious, it's probably just going to ramp up the anxiety even more.
yeah, absolutely.
But if I like truly am like tired and need a boost, you know, I think that's fine. You know,
Yeah, interesting.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm glad you brought up caffeine because it's like, we're talking about drugs, but caffeine is a drug. You can't
Yeah,
deny it. It has a transformative effect on your consciousness. I always tell people everybody's got an addiction. I don't care who you are.
yeah,
Everybody's got an
absolutely.
addiction. You either manage them or you don't, but everybody's got one. At the very least, you're addicted to oxygen and you love life and you want to keep living. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
and you'll do whatever you can to keep living, right? So it's like, everybody's got a vice or something. It's just about finding ways to balance them out and make sure that you offset them with healthier habits like exercise and good eating and whatever,
yeah,
right? Um, but
dude.
yeah, moderation's
Sugars,
hard.
yeah, sugar's the biggest one. Like
Hmm.
kids, I work at a middle school, and I see kids, you know, they'll get candy and they'll get a sugar rush. They'll even call it a sugar high. Like it's a sugar high. They're getting a transformative effect on their mind. They're getting
Absolutely.
a tiny bit of euphoria, a
Yeah.
jolt of energy. And it's like, if we're talking about drugs, literally like the definition of a drug is a substance that you ingest that alters either your physiology or psychology.
Hmm.
Sugar does both of those things. So why don't we tell kids from an early age, like, you know, sugar is a, um, I mean, I don't know if I can use the word drug, but it is
It
a
is.
substance that can, yeah, that can alter your state of consciousness. And I
It's
think it'll
refined
help.
like Coke. You know what I mean? It's like a plant that they've
Yeah.
refined. It's exactly the same. It's an analogy to cocaine
And
in food form.
and yeah. And it's even more addictive.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever
I mean, I
read?
think,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was
I
just
was
going
just
to
going to,
ask.
sorry.
I'm going to cut this part out. I was going to say, have you read Terrence McKenna's book "Food of the Gods"?
I haven't. I actually downloaded it on Audible, and I was gonna listen to it, but I didn't get around to it. I haven't read any of Terrence McKenna, honestly. I've seen a lot of his talks, and I love him. I love his everything he has to say, but I haven't read his books.
Yeah, it's the only one of his that I've read, and he talks about sugar, he talks about all of it, and he talks about the sort of prehistoric roots of psychedelics and a bit of a stoned ape theory. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Yeah,
he kind of talks about how if you look at the historical record, or prehistorical record, I guess, you find a lot of like cow symbolism and goddess symbolism, and these people were like chasing herds of cattle, wild cattle through the plains, and it's almost inevitable that they would have encountered psilocybin mushrooms, right? And then like cave
yeah,
paintings that they found from like 30,000 years ago. Those are psychedelic, man. Some people were tripping balls in some caves and they were painting all kinds of stuff. And so it's like, I think I relate to you. I have always had an interest in drugs, and I think most people do because I think it goes deep into our history. We're addicted to transformative experiences, and the best way to
hmm,
induce one of those is with some kind of substance. So I feel like we're all kind of primed for psychedelics and for other substances. Everybody kind of has that built into them, and it's just a matter of harnessing it and not letting it run roughshod over your life, I guess.
absolutely. Like an alternate perspective, an alternate state of consciousness is inherently valuable. Like it is. Like whether it's meditation or exercise or a drug, even the altered state of consciousness of being hungover is valuable because it tells you don't do that again. Like every new perspective can help you in making better decisions in your, sober life. And that is something that I think humans understand on a deep, deep level, but they forget as they get older. Because kids, you see kids, they twirl around in circles and they do these things that give them, or like stand on their head, like see the world upside down, like these subtle ways to change their perspective to see things differently. And I mean, ancient tribes using psilocybin, that goes back like, I mean, as long as we could guess, really, that is, I mean, proof to that, I guess. It's proof of how valuable an alternate state of consciousness is for a human.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's totally right. I mean, it's giving you more insights, different insights into things, and that in prehistory that had to be a survival advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's fascinating, man. Um, crazy that people are using psilocybin and ayahuasca to get off opiates. It's like exactly as you said, the endorsed socially acceptable drugs are destroying everything, and in comes psychedelics to save the day. Pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, it is crazy. And I think it goes back to our societal values of profit over human well-being. Because like, if you look at the medical industry in America, the number one priority is profit, and the
Mm-hmm.
number two priority is people, which are competing interest. Like, you have to increase profit, you have to reduce the help of people, because you need people to be buying drugs and constantly, and buying more surgeries and all these things. Like, the more money they spend, they become a like a mechanic at a car shop trying to change everything that might go wrong because it sells more.
Yeah.
But the natural plants, not all of them, but most of the natural plants like cannabis and psychedelics, they they don't work like that. They're not as profitable.
Mm-hmm.
They're, especially psychedelics, because you can take it one time and have a transformative experience. You don't
That's
need
it.
antidepressants for years.
So it's bad for business
Yeah,
from the pharmaceutical standpoint.
abs-
Crazy.
absolutely.
Yeah, I've often thought that, and I mean, I live in Canada, so it's a little bit different. But like prison for profit, health for profit, to me, I feel like there's a moral quandary there, and it's to me, it's like irredeemable that you could place profits over people's lives, freedom, health, and well-being. But here we are, and again, Canada's not much better. I know people who work in healthcare here, and even though we have universal healthcare, pharmaceuticals and money are still huge factors that probably overshadow the individual and the person, the patient. So there's an overall obsession with money, and I think one of the reasons that psychedelics are demonized and kept sort of repressed by the powers that be is that, as you said, it would be bad for business if people got on these, because it might make them realize that money is just a symbol for wealth. It does not equal wealth, and maybe people would reprioritize their lives and start doing things differently. um, it's like the psychedelic revolution or whatever, but at the same time, more and more people are using it, and I feel like the world is still entrenched in this mindset. So do you think more is needed? Do you think we
Yeah.
need more?
I mean, I think the those values that we're talking about of profit first are changing, slowly, but I think more rapidly now. I think people are realizing, that that the general population has the power. I don't think we ever realized that because we're so disconnected. But with the internet now, we realize that the power that we have as human, as like the general population, is more than a corporation. Even though the corporation has all the money, they can't tell you what to buy. It's
Mm-hmm.
still, you have to buy that stuff. And like, going back to the medical model, like, if you have heart disease, the best thing you can do is change your diet. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need a medical practitioner to do that. I mean, they can help, but the what the doctor will tell you is get a heart surgery or something, which costs thousands of dollars, and you need someone to do. But like, to change your life, the simplest things you can do and the most effective things you can do are stuff that you can choose to do on your own:
Mm-hmm.
exercise, eat right, meditate, things like this. And you don't need an external authority to allow you to do these things. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with a medical model. I say this a lot, but it's the fact that you relinquish the authority of your health to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the problem I had when I went to the neurologist looking for a problem in my brain. It was, I got this problem, now you fix me.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, if you can't fix me, then I'm doomed. But that just that's not constructive. It doesn't help you. It just leaves you stuck in a pattern. The liberation comes from saying, okay, I'm in this position because I made these choices. Now, what am I going to do to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
And it's liberating, but it's also very hard because you realize you're responsible for it. Nothing outside you is going to save you. And I think that's one of the problems with the first time I took psilocybin is this idea that, oh, this thing external is going to save me, and oh, it did save me. Now I'm better.
Mm.
But that's not the saving part. The saving part is what you do after, what I do after, how I take that experience and act on it. That's the hard part.
Totally. Integration.
Yeah.
Because that experience is, world shattering and reveals all these things to you. But if you don't integrate what you've seen into your day-to-day life, it's just going to fade into the background, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, very cool, man.
Integration is, yeah.
Yeah.
Integration is so important, but it's something that we don't really understand a whole lot. And I think it's because psychedelic experiences are inherently subjective to the person that takes them. So I think integration is going to be similarly subjective to the person that has the experience. You can't say, this is integration, journal every day and then meditate these days and then you're good. It's like me and Rory, the ritual that we do, that is an integrative practice. And that's something that I couldn't have found in, anyone tell me to do this. It was just something that kind of we created organically. And I think that's how integration is going to progress moving forward, is more developing something from within and connected with other people that you're close to that can help you revisit these past experiences and draw insight from them continuously. Because I
Yeah.
always thought, that when you had a psychedelic experience, it's like you have 7 days, you got to strike while the iron's hot. If you don't do anything, you're going to miss out on it. But now I can think back on that psilocybin experience and draw insight from it, actionable insight now, 3 years later,
Yep. It's a gift
which
that
is just
keeps
so
on
cool.
giving.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool, man, that you can, it doesn't ever go to waste. And so even if you, hadn't done what you did afterwards, it would still be there for you. And that's kind of what I tell people about the mystical experience, right? It's kind of like when that door opens inside of you, it's there. Even if it shuts, you can always go back to it and you can always find your way back to it. But what rituals do is they keep the door open and they keep you planted right there the whole time. So you're always in front of it. You always know this is the reality and this other stuff is just distractions, right? And so having that weekly or daily thing that you're constantly doing to bring it back to the forefront is to me, it's invaluable. You can't go without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I think like you said, that door that opens, sometimes you see that and you're not ready for it. And I think that's where I was with my first psilocybin experience. And that's why I regressed into old patterns, because I was ultimately, I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't ready for that. And like you said, it doesn't go away. It's still there. It's just, if I want to get into the dirty work and uncover it, that shadow work, and get into it and, make it actionable, make it integrate it, really.
Totally. Yeah. So before we sign off, I want to ask you if there's anything that you'd like to share with the audience, something useful, something wise, or just something practical that they can take into their own lives. I think I can guess, but I'll still ask you. What's your advice for people? What's your advice for the world, or what would you like to share?
As you can probably guess, I would say create rituals in your life. And the thing is, like, you don't need someone else to tell you how to make a ritual. Me and Rory and our friend Tom, we're not special. We went out of the woods and we said, let's smoke and let's try and connect. That was it. Simple. And over the past 9 months, it's developed into something that is incredibly sacred in all of our lives, and we're so grateful for it. And I want to make it make the very strong like argument that anyone can do this. You just need one or two people that you can connect with and a commitment. Pick a time, doesn't have to be once a week, could be once a month, whatever. Pick a time and commit to it and try and get into your feelings, into your fears, anxieties, and try and connect. I mean, it's transformed our lives in ways that words can never show. And then the reason we do this is simply because we want other people to see that there might be other options. Because I always felt most of my life that there was no other options. It was the medical model, or I'm on my own, or I'm screwed. And the most important thing in my life, ever since I had that psychedelic experience at 23, was show myself that there's another way to go about it than the standard pharmaceutical model. And so far my life has shown that. I haven't used Adderall in 3 years since that experience. I don't use any pharmaceuticals. And that's not to say pharmaceuticals are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for me, they weren't constructive in my life. But the relationship I have with cannabis and psychedelics have been very constructive. I'm at a point in my life where I feel more capable and confident to handle life, and just more happy and present than ever. And if I had to boil it down to one thing, it would be, well, I'll say two things: my family and my friends, mainly my family, and the ritual.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible, man. I didn't expect the conversation to go in that direction, but I'm glad it did, because I completely agree with you. And it's something that I think we need to talk about more, is the power of ritual and the power of, myths and stories, and tying emotional significance to them and making them alive, right? So man, God bless you guys.
Absolutely.
I love chatting with you guys. I mean, dude, just the fact that you guys, your whole story and the way that you guys got going into the woods to talk, and now here you are all this time later still doing it, and it's bearing fruit, more than anyone could have imagined.
Yeah.
It's so incredible.
Thank you. I mean, it's been awesome to talk with you. You're very cool, and I feel like I could talk to you for days. Like, this is great.
We barely scratched the surface, my friend. I'm down to talk and do it again as many times as you want. Same with Rory. You guys are good shit. I'm really happy that I got to know you
Yeah.
guys. And yeah, so thanks a lot for making time on this fine Tuesday evening. And I'll put the link to your guys' channel down below. And yeah, if you're watching this, check out their channel, because they're having these types of conversations pretty much every week. You guys are posting like lots of content.
Yeah, we're kind of going crazy with the content right now, but yeah,
It's
we just
good.
want to
That's a
open up the
ritual too,
discussion,
man.
want to talk more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
I
do
mean,
it.
that's why we started doing the podcast originally, was just because we realized it could help us integrate and connect more, just like we do in the ritual,
Yeah, and it's
And I want to talk to you
vulnerability.
more about, yeah, the vulnerability is the path to deeper connections. That's what I've learned. And I was going to say, I want to talk to you more about myths next time, because myth and the hero story, like these things that we can kind of attach ourselves to, or recreate really in our own lives, they can be helpful for directing us and where we want to go. And it's been huge in my life.
Oh, cool, man. Well, I can't wait to talk about it. It's one of my favorite topics. So I got some videos on the channel about it, and love Joseph Campbell. And actually, I'm going to go watch Joseph Campbell with my wife right now.
Yeah.
Power of Myth. So next time, let's do it.
Nice. All right. Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thank you. Cheers, brother. Have a good night.